Hey, thanks for stopping by. It is the second week of May 2021. Can you believe it? Are you ready to have a great conversation about data, marketing, automation? I hope so. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast for club owners, operators, and fitness professionals. Each week, host Bryan O'Rourke brings you an expert interview with a global influencer at the crossroads of fitness and technology. You gain the insights, tools, and inspiration you need to stay connected to the pulse for what matters most for your business in the age of exponential technologies.
Hello there, listeners. I'm your host, Bryan O'Rourke. Thanks again for joining us. As I said in the brief intro, the second week of May 2021. Can you believe it? A lot going on as always. The U.S. continues to open up. I know our friends in Europe continue to have restrictions, but those seem to be hopefully loosening up. I know our friend Jose in Portugal I spoke with, and I was on the phone with Germany this morning. So that's good news. Prayers going out to all our folks and friends in India as they are really suffering right now. Get vaccinated. You haven't already. I have, so I'm lucky. So hopefully things will continue to improve. Great statistics out there on people returning to health clubs, and I think that's just fantastic news. So also, if you haven't seen it, I wrote a piece on ClassPass and MindBody's potential merger. It's on my LinkedIn profile. You may want to check that out. I also just shared Peloton's Q3 results, which you might find interesting. So you can check those out on my LinkedIn profile. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Bryan K. O'Rourke. Today, we are fortunate to have Nick Hahn with us, and Nick oversees a product for ASF and Club OS, and those solutions are owned by EverCommerce, based out of Denver. What's really great about Nick is his background in healthcare. And we go into some parallels on systems, data, automation. A great experience chatting with Nick about those subjects in the health club industry. I found it really enlightening and very helpful. So I hope you feel the same. So without further ado, let's get Nick on the program. Well, listeners, as I was mentioning in the introduction, we have the benefit of having Nick joining us today. And before we get into the conversation, welcome and thank you for making time from the great city of Philadelphia.
Yeah, great to be here. I've been holed up in my son's bedroom for the last year through COVID. Excited to chat with someone else that's not part of my day-to-day routine.
Well, it's a pleasure to speak with you. And as the listeners heard in the introduction, you have a very relevant background, and we're going to get into some of your views on trends, et cetera. But before we had, this recorded portion of our interview, you and I were candidly speaking. And as I mentioned in the intro, your background in healthcare, we talked about trends and what you see in the realm of technology. And of course, since you were working in healthcare and involved in that realm of digitization, you made some pretty interesting observations that I think are pretty relevant. Can you opine on that for us?
Yeah, sure. It was interesting. So I spent 10 years in healthcare working on the payer side. And after ACA was adopted by the government, there was a rapid consolidation of technology vendors within the industry as everyone was trying to meet the new needs of digitalization that were required. It was both good and bad. There's a lot of advancement and a lot of money funded into it. But what also ended up happening was there was kind of a data grab within the industry where the vendors were trying to steal away the data from the payers, which created this conflict between the payers and the vendors, where the payers had to start deciding, did they want control of their own data or do they want to lease it out to the vendors?
Yeah, and we're seeing some of that happening right now in this space. I've written about this. When you look at MindBody, for example, in the earlier day, they have a lot of access to direct consumer information, right?
Yeah, certainly they do. There's a number of vendors out there that have a lot of access to consumer data, and consumer data is very, very valuable. You can trend it. It goes back to almost the old saying that if the product's free, you're the product at the end of the day.
That's right. It's a very interesting thing, especially when you look at what certain platforms, because of their business models, might contemplate in their future with that data versus others. So I think of Shopify and Amazon. So Amazon uses data to figure out that they can offer their own labeled jeans because they have enough data knowing what Levi's and others are doing, or batteries because they know what's happening with Eveready or whatever, the Duracell Energizer Bunny. And so when they get that data, they could actually use it against their vendor platform offers versus Shopify, which is stuck with playing in the game of pure enterprise. We're not going to be doing that kind of thing. Is that me overthinking that conflict that you mentioned, or is that a fair comparison?
No, I think that's a very fair comparison, right? It's interesting to think about because Amazon has access to all that data, but they don't necessarily share it with their customers. They're not being open about it. As a Amazon reseller, you get access to some information, but you don't get access to where you stand compared to others. All the platforms, even podcast platforms, are doing the same thing.
Yes.
You get to see some metrics on how you're doing, but you don't necessarily get to see all the nitty-gritty details. And those platforms can make the decisions on which ones are really playing well with certain demographics.
That's right. And it's hard to play in a game where you're not really aware of what the rules are. And you talked about this as well in our conversation, which I thought was right on point, is the idea of interoperability and data standards, which in the healthcare industry, because it's very large, when you were there, you saw a lot of effort in that regard, right?
Yeah, all of the products that I worked on, we always had to be extremely interoperability using the HL7 standards, the working group that they have there. It's interesting to see how big companies from Microsoft, Amazon, Google, all the way down to the Epics, the Cerners, the McKessons, the Change Healthcares, to the little guys, all were willing to play on the same playing field for interoperabilities. It made it so that the payers were able to choose based off of which service was actually best for them, so that they could pick the series of best-in-breed vendors that would give them the best offering to their customers, which in that case are consumers of health insurance policies.
That's right. And in the area of fitness, the arena of fitness, we haven't really gotten that. C-Safe as a protocol, as a standard per se in cardio equipment, and then most of the other standardizations like on payment have come from outside the industry space. But when it comes to the realm of really standardizing data amongst the different players in the gym or health care space, it hasn't happened. We really wrestled hard with that, as I was telling you in the beginning of FITSE. And I think there's just not enough money in the industry because it takes a lot of effort to do those standard efforts. And then also you have a certain mentality, in my opinion, of scarcity versus abundance. In the healthcare industry, it's a very large market. And as you pointed out, and I think rightly, Nick, people are scared to go to certain standards of data exchange because then if you're not innovative in providing a best in breed service, you're gonna get hurt by that. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was in healthcare, and the way I see it in fitness also is, if I had right now I have 2 products under my purview, they both have to stand on their own. Otherwise, they're not going to be valuable to my customers. It was the same thing in healthcare. I had a number of products I was involved in. If they weren't worth it, our payers could go to a different platform. It forced us to be best in breed, which I think is better for the payers, or in this case, the gyms in the long run. They get better innovation. They don't just get locked into, this is the one vendor I've chosen you can work with, or, you can only work with my other software platforms. They can go and be free and offer competitive solutions so that they're not the same as the other gym 5 minutes down the block. They want to be able to differentiate themselves.
Yeah, and those open standards lead to more and more reliance on systems that you can extract the benefits of data from. And we talked about this in the beginning. I know everyone has heard me talk about data before, and I know you're a very strong component or proponent of it. But in operations itself and marketing and the way that any business operates today, particularly in health club or gyms, you talked about data-driven decision making. Can you give us some examples of how your platform or others can benefit operators in that regard?
Yeah, sure. So it's been a large focus of ours on ClubOS and now on ASF for really the last 2 years to provide these insights to our customers. It's everything from not just the bigger picture things of, oh, well, how's my revenue doing? How much revenue am I going to collect next month? But it's even these micro decisions of, for example, what is the best time and day to call a prospect who submitted a web lead? Obviously, you want to hit them as soon as possible, but let's say they don't answer. When's the next time you should call back? Our data that we have been looking at shows that you can drop off as much as 50% from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday on when you're calling. Yet salespeople around the country are calling on Fridays still. Yeah. And it's just, we're showing that the show rates of appointments made on a Friday just are not happening. Right. By the end of the week, you don't want to think about working out anymore. You're done with that. But really seeing the data and being able to apply the trends to your specific locale and your specific demographic that your gym's targeting, I think is super important. Because while Monday and Tuesday might be the general recommendation across the industry, you might be in an area where it's Wednesday and Thursday. So you need to see your specific locations data and how your salespeople are doing, not just some aggregate data that someone like me is saying in a vacuum. You want to be able to apply it to your specifics.
That's right. And as we discussed, being an operator in a bunch of companies and being involved in the lead gen, the service, the other aspects of business, and then advising other clients and you having many clients, it really still amazes me how many decisions are made based on people's instinct and not based on information. And that can apply to, hey, what promotion campaign really worked? There's so many series of things that still a lot of people, they don't really make decisions on objective data.
Right. And I think all the operators I work with, and I've had the pleasure of working with some really great, innovative customers who are really trying to push me and challenge our software to be better. At the end of the day, they all have great intuition. They just need to be basing it off of the right data. And sometimes they're basing it, they think they're making data-driven decisions, but it's based off of something someone's feeling in the club, but it's not actually data-driven. When we've gone and actually started showing them the data that they're asking for and putting it in front of them, that's when I've had so many aha moments. These industry veterans who operate 40 plus clubs in multiple regions coming to me and being like, wow, that's surprising to me, but now I'm going to use my intuition to apply our resources in a different area.
Right. And there's a lot of that too is also context of information, because there are a lot of quantitative marketers that they'll show you data, but the way they're interpreting it is not in the right context. So you can even have that happen where you're making conclusions, but it's the wrong question that you're asking.
Well, that's always really interesting. And, that actually kind of brings up the whole idea of, is technology going to shape the fitness industry, or is the fitness industry going to shape technology?
Right.
Because, if you're not looking at, if even things like open rates of an email campaign, right, if you're not looking at it through the lens of the fitness industry, you might think you're missing the mark. I've had so many brand new CMOs from outside the industry come in and tell me that the join rates are too low. And it's like, you know what? Joining a gym for the most part is a known commodity. Right. You're going there to work out. You can't just be offering, come in and work out. Everyone knows that's what a gym's for. They would have already joined. They don't need your email in order to join. You got to be providing something different and something more than just that. Whereas, yeah, sure, if you're selling jeans, you might have jeans that look better.
Right.
That's a selling point.
Right. It's, socks versus, service. I mean, there's so many different aspects. Conversion rates is another thing. And then not necessarily putting those in the silos of the personas that you need to look at them in those different persona sets versus across the board where someone might be making a generic offer to 5 different personas and then judging that. And it's really not appropriate because you need to make those offers or engagements targeted to those personas to make them more effective. I mean, there's just all kind of ways you can mess it up.
Well, seasonality also.
Yep.
It's such a seasonal industry that the success, you can't compare your January campaigns to your August campaigns. There's 2 completely different things. You need technology that's going to be showing you the relevant comparisons, not just random agnostic comparisons.
That's right. And I see it all the time. You have to have context. Now, the data conversation obviously led us to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart when I talked about the execution engines for the last several years of the business, automation, data, quality data, automation. Because when you start getting contextual data, you're able to do things in an automated fashion that drives down costs and improves efficiencies. You agree with that, don't you, Nick? And tell me your thinking about automation and what that a good example or two might be of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So COVID was, of course, the great accelerator. We've seen a huge increase in adoption of automation since COVID. It's everything from, it even just starts with, why have a salesperson make that first text message outreach or first email outreach when it's going to be generic? There hasn't been a relationship developed with the individual yet. Until you actually have a repertoire with the prospect, there's no need to burn human time on the interaction. So instead, if you're using automation to understand the correct offers that you should be making to them. So first of all, always try to get them to join online. But then if they haven't joined online in those first couple of days, they clearly have some kind of objection that your website is not addressing. At that point, change up what you're doing. You want to have automation that's going to ask them to book a tour. Now, the phone call being the only way to book a tour with a salesperson is very old school. Millennials and Gen Z don't necessarily answer their phones as much as they used to.
That's right.
But if you send me a text message and say, hey, click here to book a time to have a conversation with Carl, I'm a lot more likely to just click that link, book a time, have a meeting, and it's on my terms. It's not on the club's terms. So you're shifting control to the prospect, where I don't have to talk to a salesperson until I'm in front of them, because sometimes I might not want to.
That's right. That's right. Those are great examples. The other thing we were speaking about when it comes to automation is the scalability component with centralization of effort for chains that have larger numbers of locations, versus a kind of a distributed process where you had people in club doing all this. I've been through that change a few times. Tell me your thinking about that when it comes to automation.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just automation, it's also just the technology platforms that are involved there.
Right.
It's hard to control quality when you're talking about, let's say you have, even on a low end, 3 salespeople who are going to be working across each location, and you start getting to 10 locations. That's 30 salespeople who you're trying to manage, who are potentially reaching out to customers in outgoing phone calls. There's always going to be a high turnover rate at the salesperson role. It's people who are there as a job, not a career. They're usually early in their life. They're younger. They hopefully have a passion for fitness, and they usually do. But they're ultimately, their goal isn't to be doing outbound phone calls all day. They want to become a general manager, or they're going to college for something else, and fitness is just their passion. So by having automations that will drive that consistency in the messaging, or centralizing and being able to have software platforms that will help you centralize, like ClubOS does, where you can have a team of 5 people making the outbound phone calls for your 10 locations, who are really honed in and really great at making those outbound calls. that's a game changer because the quality goes up, the show rates go up, the conversion rates go up. And at the end of the day, the dollars in the pocketbook go up at the end. It's all worthwhile.
Yeah, I agree with that. You have to really take that approach almost today to be able to get the benefits of it, because if you don't, it's going to be very hard to. So what would you think in your roles at ASF and, ClubOS, part of the EverCommerce family? I know you all are working on a lot of initiatives. What do you think are, the greatest opportunities and the greatest, couple of barriers that you would like to share with respect to where you see things happening in the coming months and years?
Yeah, so it's a combination of tracking the utilization in the club and the engagement with the analytics, right? So, for example, ASF provides the ability to do all the scheduling, and then the ASF analytics provides you insights into the trends that are involved. So, for example, are your customers frequently purchasing a shake after one of your group fitness classes?
Right.
If they are, use that data, have ClubOS come into the mix so you can start offering people who attend your group classes discounts on shakes to try to get them in. Now, there's probably some group classes you have that aren't going to have the right audience of people who are going to purchase shakes afterwards.
Right.
So you don't want to just willy-nilly be offering it to everyone. You want to find the right class that has the right group that is actually going to respond well to that offer. That's where the data comes into play. Yep. Then another thing like the ASF's online join functionality that's built in and included as part of the product, it tracks when the prospect dropped off in the process. So, for example, if they drop off immediately after seeing the price, maybe you use ClubOS to speak to them differently and have different automation go out that's tailored versus if they dropped off later in the process. For example, they at that point, they have filled in their information, they started filling in their credit card, realized they had the wrong expiration date, left, lost track of time, and didn't get back to it. That's a different conversation. Don't start trying to give them offers. They were pretty well intended on joining. Just remind them to finish joining. So it's different automation and more intelligent automation.
Yep, that's a big thing. And in general, I think it would be prudent to say, Nick, I would assume that if anyone listening has not done a thorough analysis of their technology platforms, and if they're doing these things or not, it's long past time that they do. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think just something as simple as, how are you tracking how someone heard about you? Yep. When was the last time you looked at that? What are the odds that you have billboard in there as a way that you heard? And then when's the last time you actually put up a billboard? You got to keep this refreshed. You can't just put your technology on the shelf and not do a review. That's one of the things that ClubOS and ASF have focused heavily on out of COVID is taking the insights we've learned by aggregating all of our customer data and sharing that with our accounts. We're not trying to hold that data hostage and pretend that we know more than our customers. We're trying to use that data to help make our customers more successful. If our customers and these gyms are more successful, we're more successful. So we really firmly believe that. So we're providing what at the end of the day is really a free consultation service where we are providing the insights into the data and making recommendations on how they can tweak their operations to become more efficient and get those 1, 2, 3 extra joins per day, per month, per week, whatever it is, per location to help increase their bottom lines.
Nick, thank you so much. Nick Hahn, overseeing product at ASF and ClubOS is part of the EverCommerce family. I really enjoyed our talk. I know our listeners did as well. Great to see you today, and we really appreciate you making time.
Thanks so much, Brian. This was great.
Hello, listeners. This is Bryan O'Rourke, and thanks so much for listening to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast. The podcast is made possible by the Fitness Industry Technology Council, a consortium of global brands working together to enhance the adoption of technologies in the fitness space. Our company, Videri Ventures, which is invested in Vertimax, Montezuma, Gold's Gym, Houston, Texas, and Fitness 24/7 Thailand, also underwrites the podcast, along with our service companies, Integris Advisors, Moon Mission Media, and others. Please feel free to share this podcast with your colleagues. And if I can be of any assistance to you, don't hesitate to reach out, bryanko'rourke@gmail.com, or find me on any of the major social networks. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.